The last speaker finally finished, their voice a dull drone that had long since blended into the hum of the air conditioning. Marcus sagged in his chair, the fancy conference room feeling less like a place of important decisions and more like a padded cell. His tie felt like a noose, his shirt collar scratchy against his skin. Hours had stretched into an eternity, filled with endless presentations, polite nodding, and the faint scent of stale coffee. All he wanted was to peel off his suit, kick off his uncomfortable shoes, and melt into his couch at home. The thought of his quiet apartment, a warm meal, and the blissful silence was a siren song, pulling him away from the fluorescent glare. He glanced around the room. Most of his colleagues were already gathering their things, a collective sigh of relief rippling through the space. Small talk buzzed, but Marcus had no energy for it. His brain felt like a sponge, completely soaked and unable to absorb another drop of information. He just wanted to escape. He imagined the cool evening air on his face, the simple act of walking to his car feeling like a luxury. Then he saw Ryan, who had been sitting 2 rows ahead, his posture always perfect, his eyes always attentive. Ryan, who now stood by the door, not quite leaving but not quite staying. Their eyes met across the emptying room. There was something in Ryan's gaze, something that wasn't just tired conference-goer. It was a spark, a glint that Marcus couldn't quite place, but it made a tiny, unexpected jolt run through him. He looked away quickly, telling himself it was just the exhaustion playing tricks. He needed to get out of here, away from the lingering tension of the day, away from anything that might keep him here longer. The idea of home, with its familiar comforts, beckoned stronger than ever. He started to gather his laptop and notepad, his movements slow and heavy. The air in the room, once charged with corporate energy, now felt flat and heavy, like the weight of a long, unproductive day. He just needed to get through the door, get to the elevator, and then he could finally breathe. Marcus finally stood, laptop bag slung over his shoulder, ready to make his escape. He navigated through the last few stragglers, his mind already picturing the comfort of his home. Just as he reached the main hallway, a hand lightly touched his arm. It wasn't a grab, more like a gentle anchor pulling him slightly off his course. He turned, and there was Ryan, closer than Marcus had expected. "Hey, Marcus," Ryan said, his voice low, almost a murmur against the still bustling corridor. There was a smile on his face, but it wasn't the usual polite, corporate smile. This one held a different kind of invitation, a hint of something mischievous. Marcus felt a flicker of surprise. He had thought Ryan would have left by now, or at least be on his way. "Oh, hey, Ryan, long day, huh?" Marcus tried to keep his voice casual, but the unexpected closeness made him a little nervous. Ryan's smile widened just a fraction. "You could say that. Listen, I just remembered something I wanted to show you, something important." He didn't wait for Marcus to agree, but rather began to steer him away from the main exit towards a less used part of the building. His hand remained lightly on Marcus's arm, a guiding presence that was both firm and surprisingly soft. Marcus hesitated for a moment, his internal clock screaming for him to go home. But there was an undeniable pull in Ryan's demeanor, a quiet confidence that made it hard to refuse. "Show me what?" Marcus asked, his voice betraying a hint of curiosity despite his fatigue. Ryan just shook his head slightly, his eyes sparkling. "It's a bit of a secret, follow me." He led Marcus down a quieter hallway, past closed office doors and forgotten supply closets. The carpet here was a darker shade, the lighting a bit dimmer. The corporate sterility of the conference floor gave way to something more hushed, more private. Marcus found himself following without truly understanding why, a strange mix of weariness and intrigue pushing him forward. They stopped at an unmarked door, one that Marcus had probably walked past 100 times without ever noticing. It looked like any other utility door, plain metal, industrial. Ryan pushed it open just enough for them to slip through, then pulled Marcus inside. The air instantly changed, cooler and stiller, smelling faintly of concrete and dust. It was a stairwell, stark and functional, a place of transit, not a destination. Before Marcus could even properly register their surroundings, Ryan had already reached behind them. A soft click echoed in the enclosed space. The door was locked. Marcus's breath hitched. The sudden isolation, the definitive click of the lock, sent a jolt through him that was far more potent than any exhaustion. He looked at Ryan, his heart starting to beat a little faster. The dim light of the stairwell cast shadows on Ryan's face, making his expression harder to read, but the mischievous glint in his eyes was undeniable. The hum of the conference center was gone, replaced by an unsettling silence. They were completely alone. The sharp click of the lock echoed, a sound too loud in the sudden quiet of the stairwell. It wasn't just a sound, it was a punctuation mark, ending the workday and starting something entirely new and unknown. Marcus stared at the door, then at Ryan, his breath catching in his throat. The faint scent of dust and concrete in the air suddenly felt thick, pressing in on him. His heart, already quickening from the unexpected detour, now pounded against his ribs with an urgent, unfamiliar rhythm. "Ryan," Marcus managed, his voice a little shaky, a question more than a statement. He hadn't meant to sound so uncertain, but the locked door, the dim light, and Ryan's unreadable expression had thrown him off balance. The playful glint in Ryan's eyes from earlier now seemed deeper, more intense, less playful and more deliberate. Ryan didn't answer right away. He simply leaned back against the closed door, effectively blocking any quick exit. The subtle shift in his posture, the way his shoulders broadened in the dim light, made him seem larger, more commanding than Marcus had ever perceived him in the sterile environment of the office. A slow smile spread across Ryan's face, not the mischievous one from the hallway, but a softer, warmer curve of his lips that sent a strange heat through Marcus. "Just making sure we won't be disturbed," Ryan finally said, his voice dropping even lower, a husky whisper that seemed to wrap around Marcus. The words themselves were innocent enough, a practical consideration in any private conversation. But the way he said them, the lingering gaze, suggested a disturbance of a very different kind. Marcus swallowed hard. His mind raced, trying to make sense of the situation. They were in a stairwell, a functional, uninteresting part of the building, a place designed for quick passage, not for lingering. Yet here they were, isolated, enclosed. The corporate rules, the polite distances, the unspoken boundaries that governed their professional lives all seemed to vanish with that click of the lock. A thrill, sharp and unexpected, shot through Marcus, mixing with a distinct sense of unease. He was surprised, yes, but more than that, he was beginning to feel a prickle of something akin to fear, and something else, something warm and dangerous, that he couldn't quite name. The fluorescent light from the floor above barely reached them, casting long, dancing shadows on the rough concrete walls. Each breath Marcus took felt amplified, the silence of the stairwell broken only by the quick beat of his own heart. He looked at Ryan again, really looked at him, and for the first time saw past the colleague, past the perfect posture to the man beneath. And in that man's eyes he saw an unspoken invitation, a challenge and a promise that made his nervousness twist into a potent, electric anticipation. The air between them crackled, no longer just cool and still, but alive with a tension that was both thrilling and utterly terrifying. The stark concrete walls of the stairwell, once cold and uninviting, now seemed to press in, not with threat, but with an unexpected warmth. The air, initially cool and stale, began to thicken, charged with an invisible energy. Ryan, still leaning against the locked door, slowly pushed himself off, taking a single, deliberate step towards Marcus. The small movement felt enormous, shrinking the already confined space. Marcus watched him, mesmerized. His mind, usually so logical and focused on work, felt pleasantly fuzzy, like static on a radio. He should be asking questions, demanding explanations, but the words wouldn't form. Instead, his gaze was drawn to the subtle shift in Ryan's posture, the way his dark suit seemed to absorb the scant light, making his face stand out in sharper relief. The lingering scent of his own cologne, mixed with a faint, clean smell from Ryan, started to fill Marcus's senses. Another step. Ryan was now only a few feet away, close enough for Marcus to discern the faint stubble on his jaw, the slight crinkle at the corners of his eyes that hadn't been visible from across the conference room. The mundane setting of the stairwell, with its metal railings and painted concrete, began to blur at the edges, replaced by a singular, intense focus on the man in front of him. The hum of the building, once a distant background noise, was completely forgotten. All that existed was the beat of his own heart, echoing loudly in his ears, and the soft sound of Ryan's approaching footsteps. Ryan stopped, not quite touching Marcus, but close enough for Marcus to feel the warmth radiating from him. The sterile, industrial space was suddenly imbued with a different kind of heat, a silent current flowing between them. It wasn't the heat of a crowded room or a sunny day. It was an internal warmth, rising from deep within Marcus, a flush spreading across his skin. His nervousness hadn't vanished, but it had twisted into something else entirely, an exhilarating anticipation, a dangerous curiosity. Ryan raised a hand slowly, as if not to startle a wild animal. His fingers, long and elegant, brushed lightly against Marcus's cheek. The touch was feather-light, barely there, yet it sent a shiver through Marcus that had nothing to do with the cool air. It was a spark, igniting a fire in a place Marcus hadn't known was cold. The quiet of the stairwell, the hidden nature of their location, suddenly felt less like a constraint and more like a gift, a private bubble where the rules of the outside world simply didn't apply. This sterile, forgotten corner of the corporate building had, in a few short moments, transformed into a secret chamber, alive with a pulsating, unspoken promise. Marcus felt his breath catch again, his eyes wide, as the plain concrete around them seemed to shimmer with an intoxicating, forbidden allure. The featherlight touch of Ryan's fingers on his cheek sent a jolt through Marcus, a spark that ignited a confusing mix of emotions. His breath hitched not from fear but from a sudden, exhilarating rush. His mind screamed danger, a warning siren blaring about professionalism, about boundaries, about the very public nature of their workplace. They were colleagues, for goodness sake. This was wrong. This was so incredibly, wonderfully wrong, yet his body betrayed his rational thoughts. A shiver, not of cold but of pure sensation, traced a path down his spine. The spot where Ryan's fingers had brushed felt like it was humming, alive with a forbidden warmth. His eyes, wide and fixed on Ryan's, searched for an answer, a sign that this was all a misunderstanding, a joke. But there was no humor in Ryan's gaze, only a deep, unwavering intensity that mirrored the turmoil in Marcus's own chest. He felt a primal urge to pull away, to break the spell, to reassert the distance that had always existed between them. But another, more powerful force held him rooted to the spot. It was the thrill of the unknown, the intoxicating pull of something illicit and utterly unexpected. The sterile stairwell, once a symbol of corporate drudgery, now pulsed with a raw, electric energy. The concrete walls seemed to absorb the sounds of the outside world, creating a tiny, private universe where only they existed. Ryan's thumb moved, a slow, gentle stroke along Marcus's jawline, sending another wave of shivers through him. Marcus's eyelids fluttered closed for a brief moment, savoring the sensation, the sheer audacity of it. He knew, with a certainty that both terrified and thrilled him, that they absolutely should not be doing this. The weight of secrecy, of potential exposure, pressed down on him, a heavy blanket that paradoxically amplified the heat building between them. This was a direct violation of every unspoken rule of their professional lives, a dangerous game played in the shadows of a forgotten stairwell. A faint sigh escaped Marcus's lips, a sound he hadn't known he was holding. He could feel the blood rushing in his ears, a frantic drumbeat accompanying the wild thrumming in his veins. The air, once cool, now felt thick and heavy, each breath a conscious effort. He was caught between the fear of what this could mean, the shattering of his carefully constructed professional image, and the undeniable, scorching excitement of Ryan's touch. It was a dizzying, intoxicating tightrope walk, and he found himself lining precariously into the danger. He opened his eyes again, meeting Ryan's gaze, a silent question hanging in the charged air: what happens now? The corporate world, with its rules and expectations, felt a million miles away, a forgotten dream. All that mattered was this moment, this touch, this dangerous, delicious secret. The question in Marcus's eyes was answered not with words, but with action. Ryan's hand, which had been gently caressing Marcus's cheek, slid down to the nape of his neck, fingers tangling in the short hairs there. With a soft tug, he pulled Marcus closer. It wasn't a forceful move, but an invitation, a silent command that Marcus, to his own surprise, readily obeyed. Their bodies met with a soft thud, a solid connection that sent a fresh wave of heat through Marcus. The cold, hard concrete of the stairwell faded into irrelevance as the warmth of Ryan's body enveloped him. Marcus could feel the crisp fabric of Ryan's suit jacket, the firm muscle beneath. His own hands, seemingly without conscious thought, rose to grip Ryan's shoulders, holding on as if for dear life or perhaps for pleasure. The air in the stairwell, once smelling faintly of dust and disinfectant, now carried the intoxicating scent of Ryan's cologne, mixed with something uniquely his own, something raw and masculine that made Marcus's head spin. He could feel the strong beat of Ryan's heart against his own chest, a frantic rhythm that mirrored his own. The close proximity was dizzying, a sensory overload that blocked out everything but the immediate, thrilling reality of their pressed bodies. His tie, which had felt like a noose earlier, was now caught between them, a crumpled barrier that seemed to symbolize the last vestiges of their corporate roles. Ryan's breath, warm against his ear, sent shivers down his neck. The weight of secrecy, which had been a heavy blanket, now transformed into a delicious pressure, enhancing the thrill of their closeness. No one could see them here. No one would know. This was their own private world, carved out of the sterile corporate building. Marcus felt the heat spreading from his chest to his limbs, making his skin tingle. Every nerve ending seemed alive, hyper-aware of the slight friction of their clothes, the subtle shift of weight, the quiet sound of their breathing in the enclosed space. He leaned into Ryan, letting his head rest against his shoulder for a moment, simply basking in the unexpected warmth, the forbidden comfort. It was a dangerous comfort, a thrilling warmth that promised trouble, but in this moment Marcus didn't care. The fear was still there, a tiny whisper at the back of his mind, but it was drowned out by the roaring excitement, the heady rush of being so completely, intimately close to another man in a place where they absolutely shouldn't be. The sterile stairwell had truly vanished, replaced by a cocoon of shared heat and unspoken desire. The plain walls now seemed to hold their secret, absorbing the energy that crackled between them. This was not just closeness. It was an embrace that promised to unravel everything. As Marcus leaned into Ryan, the world outside their hidden stairwell seemed to vanish, replaced by the intense reality of their shared warmth. Yet a tiny, insistent voice in the back of Marcus's mind whispered of the risks. What if someone came looking for them? What if a cleaning crew or a late-working colleague needed to use this emergency exit? The thought, rather than chilling him, sent a fresh wave of adrenaline through his veins. The danger wasn't a deterrent, it was an amplifier. Every gentle brush of Ryan's hand against his back, every slight shift of their bodies, felt charged with an electricity that wouldn't exist in a safe, sanctioned space. The thrill of being so close, so intimately connected, was multiplied by the forbidden nature of their actions. This wasn't just physical closeness. It was a defiant act against the rigid corporate world they inhabited. Ryan's hand moved from Marcus's neck, slowly tracing the line of his spine, a feather-light touch that left a trail of goosebumps in its wake. Marcus involuntarily arched his back, a silent invitation for more. He could feel Ryan's quiet chuckle against his hair, a soft rumble that vibrated through him. The sound was intimate, personal, something no one else in the office would ever hear. A faint clatter from somewhere far above them, perhaps a cart being pushed, made Marcus tense for a split second. His eyes flickered towards the door, then back to Ryan, a shared look of apprehension and excitement passing between them. The momentary fear of discovery only intensified the moment, making their secret touches feel bolder, their closeness more urgent. It was like dancing on the edge of a cliff, the danger making every step more exhilarating. He imagined the headlines, the gossip, the ruin of their professional lives if they were caught. The sheer audacity of their situation was almost intoxicating. In this sterile, forgotten corner of the building, they were creating something vibrant and alive, something entirely their own. The polished veneer of their corporate personas had been stripped away, revealing a raw, human connection that thrived on the very secrecy it demanded. Marcus felt Ryan's fingers gently squeeze his waist, a possessive gesture that made his stomach flutter. He knew deep down that this was wrong by every societal standard, every rule they lived by. But in this moment, pressed against Ryan, with the delicious fear of exposure sharpening every sensation, wrong felt incredibly, gloriously right. The danger wasn't just outside. It was a part of the delicious tension that held them captive, making each breath, each touch, a thrilling testament to their forbidden desire. The thought of being caught was a constant, low thrum, a dangerous melody that underscored the silent symphony of their closeness. In the confined space of the stairwell, with Ryan's body a warm, solid presence against his, Marcus lost all sense of the outside world. The frantic ticking of the office clock, the distant rumble of city traffic, even the urgent need to be home, all faded into an indistinct hum. Here, in this forgotten corner, time itself seemed to stretch and warp, slowing to a languid crawl. Every breath, every touch, every unspoken glance became an eternity. Ryan's hand, which had been tracing patterns on Marcus's back, now moved to cup his jaw, tilting Marcus's head gently upwards. Their eyes met again, and in that shared gaze Marcus saw not just desire but a profound understanding, a recognition that transcended words. It was a silent conversation, a dialogue of souls that spoke of shared tension, of forbidden urges, and of a raw, quiet passion that had simmered beneath the surface of their professional interactions. Marcus felt himself leaning into the touch, his lips parting slightly, an involuntary invitation. The air between them, already thick with unspoken desires, seemed to hum with an almost audible frequency. Ryan's head dipped slowly, deliberately, giving Marcus every opportunity to pull away. But Marcus didn't. He couldn't. He wanted this with a fierce, unexpected intensity that both shocked and thrilled him. Their lips met, soft at first, a tentative exploration, then deepening with a sudden, urgent hunger. It was a kiss that tasted of conference coffee and something uniquely Ryan, a blend of clean linen and raw, simmering heat. Marcus's hands, still on Ryan's shoulders, tightened their grip, pulling him even closer if that were possible. He felt the soft give of Ryan's hair as his fingers tangled in it, the surprising firmness of his mouth. In that moment, the sterile concrete walls, the flickering fluorescent light, the very idea of their workplace ceased to exist. There was only the press of their bodies, the warmth of their mouths, the shared secret pulsing between them. It was a suspended reality, a bubble of quiet passion where the only sounds were their soft breaths and the frantic beating of their hearts. This was not a hurried, illicit encounter. It was a lingering, deliberate act, savoring every second of stolen intimacy. The world could wait. The conference, their careers, their responsibilities, all were put on hold, forgotten in the intoxicating embrace of this secret, timeless moment. The weight of secrecy, rather than crushing them, simply added a delicious layer of intensity to their shared, quiet passion. The kiss, deep and consuming, slowly softened. Ryan pulled back first, but only by an inch, his forehead resting against Marcus. Their breaths mingled, still ragged, still heavy with the lingering passion. The sudden quiet after the storm of their kiss was almost deafening. The raw heat in the stairwell remained, a palpable presence, but the urgent need for touch had, for a moment, subsided into a tender, knowing stillness. Marcus's eyes fluttered open, meeting Ryan. There was a new depth in those eyes now, a vulnerability that had been carefully hidden behind professional facades. The mischievous glint was still there, but it was overlaid with something more profound, something that spoke of shared experience and a secret bond forged in defiance. Slowly, reluctantly, they untangled themselves. Ryan's hands slipped from Marcus's waist, though his fingers lingered for a moment, a silent promise of future contact. Marcus's hands dropped from Ryan's shoulders, feeling suddenly empty without the solid warmth of him. The space between them, which had felt so intimate moments ago, now seemed vast, filled with unspoken words and the echo of their forbidden kiss. A sigh escaped Marcus, a mixture of regret and exhilaration. He smoothed down his tie, a gesture of returning to order, but the crumpled fabric felt foreign, a stark reminder of how thoroughly he had been disheveled, both physically and emotionally. His mind, still reeling from the unexpected intimacy, began to process the implications. This wasn't just a stolen kiss, it was a breach, a crossing of lines that could never truly be uncrossed. They both knew, without a single word needing to be spoken, that this secret must remain just that, a secret. The consequences of exposure, the whispers, the judgments, the potential ruin of their careers loomed like a silent guardian at the edge of their private bubble. The weight of it settled on Marcus, not as a burden but as a shared understanding, a heavy, yet strangely exciting, responsibility. This secret was now a part of them, binding them together in a way that no conference room meeting ever could. Marcus looked at Ryan and Ryan looked back. There was a subtle shift in their dynamic, an undeniable change that had occurred in this forgotten stairwell. They were no longer just colleagues. They were co-conspirators, guardians of a thrilling, dangerous truth. What had happened between them couldn't be undone, couldn't be forgotten. It was etched into the very fabric of their shared experience, a quiet revolution in the heart of a sterile corporate world. They had entered this stairwell as one version of themselves, and they were leaving as another, irrevocably altered by the heat and daring of their hidden passion. The silent concrete walls, once witnesses to a forbidden act, now stood as silent keepers of a transformative secret. With a final, lingering look, Ryan turned and unlocked the stairwell door. The click echoed, not as an end, but as a silent recommitment to their secret. The mundane office hallway stretched out before them, bright and unyielding, a stark contrast to the shadowed intimacy they had just left. It was as if stepping out of the stairwell was stepping back into a different reality, one where ties were straight, smiles were polite, and secrets remained buried. Marcus took a deep breath, trying to steady his racing heart and clear his head. The air in the hallway felt cooler, thinner, devoid of the heady scent that had clung to them in the stairwell. He glanced at Ryan, who was already composed, his usual professional demeanor firmly back in place. Only the slight flush on his cheeks and the lingering warmth in his eyes hinted at the wildness that had just transpired. "Well," Ryan said, his voice back to its normal, even tone, "that was informative." He offered a small, almost imperceptible wink, a private signal that only Marcus would understand. Marcus managed a weak smile in return, feeling a rush of heat creep up his own neck. "Yes," he agreed, his voice a little rougher than he intended. "Very informative." He adjusted his laptop bag, suddenly aware of the wrinkles in his suit, the slight disarray that threatened to betray his composure. He felt like he was walking on air, yet every step was a deliberate effort to regain his footing in the ordinary world. They walked side by side towards the elevators, maintaining a respectable, professional distance. The corporate hum of the building, once so oppressive, now felt like a welcome shield, a blanket of normalcy to hide their shared transgression. Other colleagues passed them, offering tired nods and mumbled goodbyes, completely oblivious to the seismic shift that had just occurred between the two men. As they reached the elevator bank, Ryan pressed the down arrow and the doors hissed open. He stepped in and Marcus followed, their shoulders brushing lightly. That fleeting contact, however brief, sent another spark through Marcus, a reminder of the burning intimacy they had just shared. He knew with an absolute certainty that he would never look at Ryan the same way again. The colleague he had known, the one who sat 2 rows ahead in meetings, was now inextricably linked to the passionate, dangerous man in the stairwell. They exited the building into the cool evening air, each heading towards their respective cars, back to their separate lives. But the silence that stretched between them wasn't empty. It was filled with the echo of a locked door, the memory of a forbidden kiss, and the potent understanding of a secret that bound them. Marcus drove home, the city lights blurring past him, his mind replaying every touch, every breath, every stolen moment. He was going back to his normal life, but he was carrying a secret that had forever altered its landscape. The sterile corporate building would never again be just a place of work. It would always hold the memory of their quiet, burning passion.